When you're exploring dark, cobwebby caves and the spiders are crawling all over you, make sure you carry your bestiary. Now get him off. Get him off.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Bestiary, where today we are going to be talking about giant spiders from 5th edition D&D. I am here today with Jonathan. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello. All right, cool. Tyler, say hello.
Hello.
Excellent. And Kayvon.
Hey there.
And my name is Morgan. So hello, everybody. Welcome. Giant spiders today. Jonathan, you were the one to pick giant spiders today. Would you like to tell us why?
Yes, I chose giant spiders because I'm terrified of spiders. And, I think we have a fascination of things we're terrified with, like ex-girlfriends and...
I have questions. I suddenly have many questions.
No, it's my turn. It's my turn to ask questions.
Okay.
I don't have to answer those questions. But yeah, I chose giant spiders. Because I am terrified of them. I mean, to the point that, just a little story here. When I was a kid, I remember I was playing Resident Evil 2, the original, with my friend Ethan, and we got to these sewers. And I'd never played a Resident Evil game before, so I didn't know there would be giant mutant spiders. And I heard this thump, 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 like on the walls.
Oh, I remember that scene. Yeah.
You turn this corner and they are rushing at you. And I literally screamed and threw the controller and had to go. My friend had to beat the sewers for me.
Good job.
Do they not have any webbing or anything on the walls in order to sort of show?
Oh no, they totally mess with you.
That's not cool.
It's like a jump scare.
That's not cool at all. That's not how spiders are. They don't just hunt you without webbing nearby. Get out of here.
And this leads me to kind of where I'm kind of going tonight, because by the end of tonight, what I've hoped to discover is not just more about giant spiders, but also a little bit about how to capture my fear for my players in the game. How to make you all scared of giant spiders.
Honestly, I'm not sure that's going to work unless... Yeah, I'm not sure how you could make me afraid of giant spiders.
Well, they've been scaring people for millennia. And that kind of leads me to my first question, which is what in fiction did you guys find the origin of the giant spider? Oh, in fiction.
In fiction?
Yeah.
Oh,
that's hard because they date back into mythology pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
Maybe it might be the Odyssey with the tale of Arachne.
The Metamorphosis.
Yeah, Ovid's the Metamorphosis.
Yeah,
by Ovid. Yep. I think that was probably it.
That was written in the 8th century AD. Or no, 8 AD. Like 8 AD. Like the 8th year of the AD. So
tell me more about it. What's that spider? I don't think I know that story.
You don't know the story of Arachne. Essentially, she bragged that she was better at weaving tapestries than I think it was Athena. And she's okay with friendly competition, but all of the gods were jealous. And so they ended up having a competition, and I think she actually won, and Athena hated her and turned her into there's a couple versions of it. In one, in Rage, she turns her into a giant spider. In another one, she loses and she ends up hanging herself due to depression or something. And as feeling guilty for causing this woman to die, Athena turns her into a spider so she can continue weaving. And the interesting thing too is sometimes it looks like she's just a tiny normal, a spider. And other times she's a horrible drider monstrosity thing, depending on the artist. So right. That's interesting.
One of the versions of that story that I have heard that I really enjoyed, there's an almost meta commentary on the Greek mythology in it, where Athena's tapestry is this beautiful picture of the gods, all just noble and wonderful, and Arachne's is the gods as written. So, you know, they're drunk,
cruel
they're
and
horny,
jealous,
they're cruel, you know.
So it's honest. It's the honest depiction.
Yeah, and she didn't like that. That was
Oh, I like that. I like that version.
Yep.
I actually also found I found what I think is the earliest use of giant spiders in, like, because I know in the Metamorphosis it's really just about her turning into a spider.
Yeah, there's other giant monsters in that one.
This bit of trivia, I thought of you, Tyler, when I found this.
Okay.
So, because it is the earliest known science fiction, the first example of science fiction in Western literature. And it was written in the 2nd century AD by a Greek named Lucian of Samosata, and which I hope I'm pronouncing right. But he was an Assyrian a Greek author, but he was of Assyrian descent. And he wrote a novel called A True Story. And it actually includes intergalactic warfare, travel.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Greek story about intergalactic warfare, travel to outer space. And it features aliens invading the Earth. And the aliens, at least at some point, come in the form of giant spiders.
Did you read this, or did you just find like a summary of it somewhere?
I read a summary of it. Yeah, it's available though. And I did read selections of it, and it's actually.
I need to find a copy of this.
Yeah, it actually is pretty good, and it's complicated by the fact that, or I guess made more awesome by the fact that it's actually was originally written as a satire on the Odyssey.
Mm.
He was satirizing Homer, so even in those days,
that's amazing.
The bards got made fun of. Bard was still a classic. Got made fun of.
That's amazing.
So,
how do we know it's not a true story? I mean, maybe he was like, "This is satire," you know, heavy air quotes, but in fact, he is the veteran of a vast intergalactic war.
I just love. Of course, the Greeks would create space opera. That's, you know. One thing I wasn't able to find, though, and I wondered if you guys did, was the origin of the giant spider in Faerun, in the world of D&D, the Forgotten Realms.
I think they've just always been around. Maybe I would hazard a guess that Lolth has something to do with it.
Yeah, we definitely need to talk about Lolth at some point tonight as the patron. Well, it's really the goddess of spiders, not the patron. Was anybody else able to find out the origins of the giant spider in Faerun?
I did not look into the D&D aspect of it. No. That's usually your job, John.
I even tried to dig and find the origins of them in Faerun, and I really couldn't, which kind of leads me to another question. I mean, I guess we have to just consider these things just sort of sprang up. And then, like,
but it's like, what's the origin of a giant ants? Like, they're there. The world has big creatures.
Yeah, but my question is, why the heck would you let those things? Like, I feel like you'd exterminate those immediately.
You know, I'm sure people have tried, but have you ever tried to kill an ant colony? You know, like I've tried to keep insects and bugs away from my house my entire life.
The kettle with boiling water. I guess you need a giant kettle.
There's nothing you can do.
Futile.
Yeah, it's a futile effort.
Well, and giant spiders have been found to be useful for lots of people throughout the history of.
Like villains?
Well, yeah, villains mostly, but
mostly. Well, I mean, in fantasy, I mean, the two most obvious images that people will think of right now, especially modern days after the films, are the Lord of the Rings Shelob, and then I think it was Aragog?
Yeah, Aragog, Harry Potter.
Was it Aragog? Yeah, okay. Yeah, from Harry Potter. And I mean, that's because those are hugely enormous franchises. But I mean, there were even giant spiders in various Godzilla films. I remember the giant spider, like, robot from Wild Wild West.
Ha!
Like,
yes.
remember that film?
Now, are you guys also scared of spiders? Is this just a me thing? Like,
I'm scared of anything that might do me harm. And some spiders, like if you're in Australia, I wouldn't mess with a spider.
Well, you must be scared of everything in Australia.
Yeah, but I'm not
including maybe Australians.
Yeah, I'm not very concerned about spiders on the day-to-day here in Oregon.
I don't I would never call it a fear. I think it's more of a healthy respect when you like if in Arizona, I grew up around black widows all the time and brown recluse. I was actually bit by a brown recluse, and we had tarantulas. But I was never afraid of them. It was just you belong outside. Please don't be on my ceiling when I wake up at 2 a.m, which has happened. And essentially, if they're venomous, you squish them from a distance or don't go near them. That's kind of it.
Yeah.
The Black Mama points out, of course, the arachnophobia, where some
True.
And I actually
irrational phobias. You can't control
No,
those.
and I actually have it. And I was reading about it a little bit to try to understand it better for as part of this podcast. And there's an interesting thing about arachnophobia. Unlike a lot of phobias, it doesn't create in most people a fear sensation. Which I thought about and it was true. I say I'm afraid of spiders, but the actual sensation of arachnophobia is disgust. And they think this is because in evolutionary terms, the quote unquote fear of spiders actually came because societally, culturally, at least in Western culture, they were thought of to be dirty and you were an infection. You were going to get infection. If a spider was in an area, it was thought to be unclean. And so the phobia that developed was based more on feeling disgusted by spiders rather than actually afraid of them. So a lot of times people will describe feeling like they need to get clean or like they need to shake off or like change their clothes.
I wonder how much of that ties to the sensation of walking through a spider web, because I totally do get the full body. Yeah, right. I get the full body shiver when I accidentally walk through a spider web, and it's just like, oh,
yeah,
God.
It's the pain of being tall. We both suffer from this.
Yes.
You're the first head that's hit that height in a while, and it just clips you right in the eyeball,
right across the forehead, and then gets stuck in your hair, and you're just like, oh, that's not disgust for me though. It's just, oh, another one. Great. It's more annoyance than anything, but it does cause a full body shiver for a moment. So maybe that's where that comes from. Also, like all of the literature and films and video games where like you go into a derelict place and it's covered in cobwebs because nothing lives there except for bugs. And spiders are the most obvious because of the cobwebs they leave behind.
But one of the reasons I ask these questions about the origins is, I try to understand in Dungeons and Dragons, it's kind of, like Kayvon, talked about insects being all over the place. And these giant spiders are. I think they show up like everywhere. They're a very common monster. It's an easy one to understand. Giant spider. Okay, we got to kill that. That's
There's no conflict there.
No.
They have thousands of kids too, so that may be part of it. It's not like it's not like they only breed once every 20 years. Like
no,
one of them can repopulate, or two of them can repopulate the species. If you were going to have some sort of like let's exterminate them all campaign.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're not going to kill all the spiders. No, it's true. I just, I wonder if anybody's tried. If anybody's been like, we are burning. Like, I think it'd be a great plot for like a villain who's not just he's just has an incredible arachnophobia, and he decided he has to burn the world down to kill all the spiders.
Specifically to destroy the spiders.
Yes, just to kill all the spiders. Like, but that's his villain. That's your super villain.
I like it.
There's a campaign idea.
Yeah.
But you do see these, all over through campaigns, through, they appear, I think, like in pretty much every module. Like there's a scene where like you go into a cave, there's a giant spider.
Yeah.
There's an old castle. In this room, there's a giant spider has made its home, things like that. Like they're just everywhere.
No, it's never like shocking when you're like, and a giant spider it comes out of a cave or a castle or an abandoned mansion, or like you're like, yep, right. Yeah, figure it.
Which no, go ahead, yeah.
No, I wonder if we have the same question. Go ahead.
My question is, I wonder if people in Faerun have arachnophobia.
Oh,
I'm
sure some
do.
But
it's just if we agree that the research says it's a socially constructed thing.
I feel like that's a flaw or something. I feel like I've seen on some sort of table where you had to roll your fears or what your flaws.
You're afraid of spiders.
Arachnophobia, I'm sure, because there's like that list gets pretty extensive. I'm sure if we Googled it, we could find a
right next to like afraid of halflings.
Yeah, something. Yeah, some sort of racial disparities. Yeah.
Part of it, like you were saying, the revulsion aspect is they're in dark, unused places, And it's not like giant spiders are like, just somebody's just riding a giant spider down, the main road of Waterdeep or something. They're still.
I would love to see that.
They're still in dank, unused places. Like the only people that, as a culture, are totally accepting of them are the drow. So you see a lot of giant spiders, and your first instinct maybe won't be, oh, this place is disgusting. It might be like, oh, fuck, the dark elves are here.
True.
So I guess it wouldn't be unnatural to be afraid of something that's giant, 8-legged, and can actually kill you.
Yeah, so like a regular sized spider, I kind of just roll my eyes when people are like, oh, I hate spiders. And I'm just like, whatever, they're just bugs. But if I came face to face with a spider that was like bigger than I am tall and had like fangs that were the size of my arm, I could totally see the fear for that, because that is, at that point, you are now prey, and we're not used to being that small facing, at least humans. We rarely encounter creatures that are bigger
Especially
than
not
us.
predators. Yeah.
No. I mean, how frequently do we bump into a tiger anymore? Not all that often. So like running into something that's this big and that alien looking, because like the many eyes and the giant pincers and like the 8 legs, like, yeah, it would be incredibly disturbing. But that would be more of a fear for my life than a spider, like
Right.
phobia, at least in my case.
It'd be like coming across a grizzly bear or a tiger.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
like,
exactly. Oh shit.
I'm going to get eaten now, aren't I?
Yeah, exactly. Am I immune to poison? Quick.
Well, the earliest, did anybody find we say they're in every campaign, but did anybody find like the most prominent campaign or the earliest, or like an incredible spider adventure for Dungeons and Dragons?
No, I did not. Did you?
Did
you find a spider themed campaign?
Yeah, I found the most famous one. And it's
Right.
and it's one of the earliest. And it is the Queen of the Spiders.
Right,
which
okay.
is a super, they called them super modules back in the day. I'm trying to get the date. I wrote it down. It was 1986 was when they released it as a super module. It was actually written before that in a different form. Gary Gygax wrote it, and he used to use it for tournaments. And in some lists, it is ranked, in many lists, it's ranked high. In some, it's ranked as the best D&D adventure of all time. And it is the adventure that introduces the drow. Before that, they're legend. And this was the first, and actually, this is kind of a fun story. I mean, we'll talk about drow in another podcast, but people thought that the drow were, like, players thought that the drow were a joke or like just a legend, like in-world legend. And then suddenly in this one module, they're underground, and you realize there's thousands of them, and they're trying to take over the overland. And it was a cool moment for gamers. Like, us for sitting here, we've all been introduced to the drow before we started playing the game. So for us, we like, oh yeah, dark elves. But people at that time, they didn't have that connection. So it was this sudden reveal of like, nope, this shit is real. This shit is real. And it turned out their goddess, Lolth, was the goddess of spiders. And they had a heavy, heavy influence in the campaign.
How is her name spelled? LLOTH? Or
It's actually simpler than that. It's just LOLTH.
LOLTH. Okay.
Yeah, like lol.
Lol. Lol.
Ha, ha.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I was wondering. Because I've heard it pronounced several different ways. It's always the case with those kinds of things.
And I did see that Black Mamba asked the origins of Lolth.
Yes.
On the thing. Which I know the story. I know I'm the guest, but I do know the story. If
no, I mean, go for it. I definitely don't.
It's again, it's a story that's kind of tied to the drow, but I'm going to tell it now. And then when we do the drow, there's other gods and goddesses to discuss. But the story of Lolth is actually it's instrumental to the story of the elves. And it starts with the creation of the elves. Actually, it starts kind of before that. The elvish god Corellin, he was in a battle that where his blood spilled, the blood itself became living creatures. And these creatures were pieces of him, embodiments of him, but they didn't have a set form. And they would kind of drift in and out of forms, but they were his companions. And he actually raised them up. And the ones that he felt represented the best aspects of himself, he gave names. And in naming them, he gave them power.
Mm.
Oh.
Now, over time, several of these beings decided they were turned away from the forever changing, the immutable form, and they decided to take more permanent physical traits. And these traits are what we now associate with elves in general. And amongst these was Lolth, who had a different name at the time, which I think was Arushane. I might be, but we'll have to revisit that when we get to the drow. I can't remember the exact name. She had a different name, and she was Corellan's consort and lover and his greatest companion. And she secretly was conspiring against him.
Isn't she also like a half spider though? Like
at this time she wasn't.
Okay.
At this time she wasn't. At this time she was a beautiful elvish woman. And they actually had children together. The most famous of which is Elistray, but that's a whole other tragedy. Lolth gathered some of the elvish gods around her, and she began to secretly preach against Corellan, saying that he was trying to keep them from experiencing the true joys of the world, that he didn't want them to come into power, their own power. And she created a rift. And this rift led to a confrontation where there was a battle. And it's kind of, the details of the battle change depending on which version, which edition of D&D you read. Some say it was just a verbal sort of trial. Others say that it was an actual war where Lolth allowed demons to enter and attack the elvish kingdom. Whatever the case, during the battle, Corellan was wounded, and Lolth took the opportunity to try and heal him, but she was really trying to poison him. And she was betrayed by one of her own lieutenants who caught the poisoning and alerted Corellan to it. And as punishment, Lolth was banished. She was struck, and in striking her, she transformed and became a monstrosity, which was this giant spider woman. And she was tossed down into the abyss, where she took residence in the 66th layer of the abyss, known as the demon web. Or at least she turned it into the demon web. And there she actually found the original god of spiders, who was a demon named Zanasu, I believe. Zanasu, yeah. And she quickly engaged him in combat. And over many years, she fought him, and they fought back and forth until she played a trick, which actually basically sent him, she made him believe that he could turn against some foes in the mortal plane, but they were far too strong for him. And when he returned weakened to the demon web, she had one of her drow murder him and take on his essence. And that drow is now her lieutenant. But so Zanasu, the original Zanasu, is dead.
So what is this? What's the difference between the Underdark, where the drow live, and this demon web?
So the abyss is a different plane of existence. Do you want to talk to that a little bit?
Or should we wait till we get to drow to go deeper into that?
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't think that has much to do with giant spiders. We should hold that off for I mean, we could have an entire episode where we talk about planes and the lore,
yes,
and just ideas of planes.
But to end this story, the reason it's important to elves is the Corellan, in his grief at having been betrayed by Lolth, he actually gave all of his companions, he forced them to stay in their physical form and shoved them all into the material plane. And that's why elves never die. When elves die, their souls go back to Corellan, and he allows them to stay for a while in the glory lands, the lands that he created that are always happy. But because of their betrayal of him and their working with Lolth, he has never allowed them to stay permanently. And that's why their souls return. And they grow old again. And at the end of their lives, an elf remembers everything, all of his lives and all of his shame and everything that he did. And they remember the betrayal of Corellan.
Some proper lore right there. Breaking it down, Jonathan.
I really love that story.
You got deep.
I was like, what are we going to talk about on the giant spider episode? He's like, oh no, I know what we're going to talk about.
I got this. I'm going to ask all the questions and have all the answers. This is John. We are used to this. All right. So
I know what we're talking about. 2,000-year-old science fiction.
Right. So now that we've got kind of the lore and the origins out of the way, do we want to, John, do you have any questions specifically for the like physicality of them? I mean, I saw that Mamba asked a question that do adult spiders, giant spiders, I'm assuming, have abilities like charm or sleep, or are they just kind of melee creatures?
Yeah, I have a ton of questions. And if somebody wants to answer that question as well, please go for it.
No, they don't have abilities like Charm or Sleep, especially in 5th edition, where personally, after doing this research, I feel like the giant spider as a whole kind of got nerfed completely.
Oh, yeah.
They are very much a physical fighter. They use, for the most part, using webbing and poison to take down their prey.
Yeah, they've got spider climb, web sense, and web walker. So it's all like web related, and then bite and web. So that is kind of boring.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a bit about, Tyler, about what changed? Like, what do you or Kayvon or anybody who looked them up, like what makes you feel like originally they were a better creature?
In 5th edition, there are 3 types of giant spiders that I could find. The phase spider, which is cool. It's a spider that mostly exists in the ethereal realm and just kind of like pops out to eat you. Your
hello, goodbye.
Your giant spider, which is the one that just web walk and spider climb and all that, and a giant wolf spider, which is kind of the weaker, like runs around on the ground sort of spider. Starting in the Monstrous Manual for AD&D, there were, let me see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 that just in the Monstrous Manual under spider, without even getting into variants like the crystal spider.
I never looked these up because I was scared of spiders.
Yeah, they...
this explains why we haven't encountered too many spiders in our campaign.
There was a huge variety of spiders across difficulty levels that you could use. So the giant spider was, I feel like in 5th edition, you're low level, you find a giant spider. Oh my God, it's terrifying. By the time you're like level 10 or so, like one giant spider is not really doing it for you. Like it's gonna die just walking up to you.
I will say as a DM, and we've seen this actually play out in our game that we're playing right now. Giant spiders in groups get much more threatening even at higher levels. I know that like they're pretty squishy.
But sheer numbers can totally just overwhelm, especially if your characters don't have any immunity to the poison or just they're already injured in our case.
And I think that's it. It's they have 2 abilities. They have their web shooting and they have their poison. And both of those severely disable party members. Like web.
No, because 5th edition, their poison only paralyzes if you hit 0 hit points.
It's still 2d8 though, which is a fair amount of damage and it's a little hard to you can dodge it, but it's still you still take half damage even on a dodge. Like the poison's pretty tough. Like their bites kind of nerf, like a 1d8 is like whatever, but it's fairly easy to hit, plus 5 to hit.
So they don't poison you. Maybe I was misremembering. They don't poison you like with the poison condition.
Yeah, they do, but they bite. You have to get bitten and then you get poisoned.
And do you end up with the poison where you have disadvantage on rolls? Like it says you are poisoned, and
I believe you are poisoned because I believe you have to save at the end of every. You get damaged at the end of every round, right?
I don't think you get damage.
Isn't that the?
This is funny. We don't know. We all have a different version of the spider in our mind. I like Kayvon's version.
Yeah,
Kayvon's version is brutal.
I tend to OP creatures. No, I feel like that's the thing, right? You get poisoned. You take 2d8, and you hold on. You're still poisoned, right? Until you save.
Well, according to the actual bite, it says if the poison damage reduces the target to 0 hit points, the target is stable but poisoned for 1 hour, even after regaining hit points, and is paralyzed while poisoned in this way.
But this is kind of what I'm talking about. Poison as an effect means you roll at disadvantage.
Yes.
And that's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
And so is Web. I know it's got a very low DC, but if you're rolling against, say, 14 giant spiders, I mean, I am talking numbers here, but they're all getting to roll Web on you. Chances are you're going to roll 1 on one of those things.
Yep.
And guess what? Now you're webbed. You have to spend a turn, waste a turn, breaking free of the web. Yep. And what if you roll a 1 on that? Now you're wasting a whole other turn.
You're also moving with disadvantage because you're walking through their lair at this point, and their web is all over their lair. Yeah.
And that's if the DM hasn't thrown in a big mama spider like I like to do in those situations to also come down and mess with everybody.
Again, that big mama spider was something that you pulled from a different...
It was. To be fair, it was. And there are some more interesting spiders in books like Kobold Press, Tomb of Monsters. They do a great set of spiders. But you're right. Officially in D&D 5, I would agree. I'm sad. I didn't realize they had so much variety, Tyler.
Yeah. No, they I was fascinated when I went into the Monstrous Manual because I was like, cool, like giant spiders. And it's just like this whole list of like, different sizes of spiders have different poisoning, different, habitats. They have marine and water spiders.
Water spiders? So they swim?
Mm-hmm. Wait, what?
This is a crab.
No, there's water spiders in real life.
Yeah, it's called crabs.
No. Like I'm telling you, Australia, dude. They form air bubbles around their heads and they lay underwater under like a pond, and they just like wait for something to like come up in, and then they bite it. Yeah, it's gnarly. Don't go to Australia.
Okay, there's so many questions. Like one, thanks, I'll never swim again.
Yeah,
Two,
I'll Google the name.
That is how the giant water spider is from the giant spider subclassification. So it's about 8 feet in diameter. They live in a burrow near fresh water, and just like he said, they fill that burrow with air bubbles. They have a little air bubble on their heads, so they lurk underwater.
Mm-hmm. That's nuts.
Yeah. And then there's a gargantuan version for the ocean that's the giant marine spider, which is similar, only they are 10 feet long and 20 feet in diameter.
Yeah, that's outside my comfort zone.
Wow. So that is a little sad that they cut some of that variety. I hope they bring it back in later editions for the spider. I didn't know that they
had flying spiders with wings.
No. See, no, don't need spiders with wings.
Yeah, sounds like the flying owlbear. I don't know about that.
Yeah, way worse than way worse than the flying owlbear. So another question I guess we have to get into is we've gotten this kind of become a tradition. We've got a couple of traditions going. Tradition number 1 is how do giant spiders mate? And before we get into this, we have to think a little deeper on this, because we know that in normal in our world, spiders are pretty solitary. And the mating process is like the male hunts down the female and then basically gets his ass kicked and maybe gets to lay some eggs inside of her.
I mean, he doesn't usually lay the eggs.
Drop some sperm. Yeah, that's it. Sorry, that's what I meant.
Yeah. Hello. Not at me, John. But yeah, I mean, most of the time they get eaten as they're like protein sources for the female, so she can actually grow the eggs enough to hatch them. Yeah.
But that's a very antisocial spider. I mean, that's the thing. Spiders are very antisocial in our world. We know in D&D, just because of the way they're put together, that giant spiders, I mean, they travel in packs. They're almost always found in groups. And while that may have originated as sort of this is the only way they're a threat thing, I think we still have to take it for reality.
that they are somewhat social. So yeah, do they mate for life, or is it a convenience thing?
Most of the famous giant spiders in lore are all women. So
you're
it
right.
Interesting.
might still be the situation that the men are don't last long, and the women, because there's also types of spiders that like the women will die shortly. Like in real life, the women will die shortly after giving birth, but there's others where the women live for 30 years, almost like 15, 30 years, incredibly long lives, and they just mate throughout that, and the men don't. They just live for a little while, mate, and die. So it's it could be more of that kind of model.
Maybe the most disturbing one is the matrophagy, where the spiders are eaten by their young. They hatch. The mother actually.
Yeah.
I don't know. I always thought there was something beautiful in that. Like,
really?
Like they. Well, because she. Yeah. I don't know.
Don't go to Tyler's house for dinner. Don't go to Tyler's house for dinner.
Those spiders are the ones that, like, the females typically eat the males, and then the females are eaten by the young. So it's like a food source, energy source transfer kind of a thing in that sense. And yeah, that is kind of cool, but also highly disturbing.
Yeah, really disturbing.
At the same level.
But I like what you said, Kayvon. I didn't think about that, about the female aspect of the spider, like the being, and that's true to Drow society too, because it's a matriarchal society.
Yeah.
And
so's Tolkien, though technically that's a demon in spider form, but that's also a woman.
Well, no,
Shelob
Shelob is a spider.
No,
Shelob is a spider. Ungoliant was a demon.
well, Ingoliant is Shelob.
No. I thought Ingolian is Shelob's parent.
Oh, I think you're right. I'm
pretty sure Shelob's a demon in spider form as well. Maybe not. Maybe I'm mistaken.
I would have
it's a woman. It's a woman regardless, is the point.
Yeah, well, and then you have the Arachne lore, that's a female spider myth. A lot of them are daughters, and because it's the weaving aspect, and that's typically a female thing. There is a African deity named
Anansi.
Yes, Anansi.
Yeah, there's Anansi.
The trickster
Yeah,
spider.
he's like the Loki type character.
That's a dude, though. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a dude.
He's a dude.
Tyler's personal favorite deity.
Is that your favorite deity?
Yeah. Anansi's great.
Why didn't you bring him up in your you were talking about the lore earlier? I thought I was waiting for someone to say something.
Well, he's not a giant spider though, is he?
Yeah, he's not
a giant spider. He just
he's
just a dick that occasionally turns into a spider, usually to hide.
Yeah.
So giant spider isn't the best form
knowledge
for him.
And he likes yams.
He likes yams?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole story about that.
Is there a story on it?
That's amazing.
I don't know the story.
But yeah, Native American mythology has a male one. I believe that the Japanese mythology has a male and female spider mythology that are different.
Are they giants?
I think the female one, no, the male one is. Yes.
Were they considered good luck in Asian? Yeah, I hear that a lot. Like a spider's considered good luck.
There's a lot of different Asian cultures, so that's.
I don't know.
You can't generalize like that. It totally depends. But frequently, yeah, they were used as inspirational things and heraldry and, again, weaving the loom creation. But also, yeah, tricksy because of the whole oh, hey, they're cute and poisonous aspect of them. So
yeah,
I don't know. It's inconsistent across the board is the problem.
So another traditional question that we've talked about is what, and I did do the research on this, but I thought I'd put it to Tyler first,
okay,
and see if you know.
Put him on the spot,
what does spider meat taste like?
Oh God.
Oh, okay. I've heard. I haven't eaten a spider because.
But wait, what?
I haven't eaten
disqualified.
Spider because it terrifies me. Like the idea of eating
I'm sure
insects
it's a texture more than a
is a little weird. Barnaby, I want to say that it's like a peanut sauce.
Barnaby?
He's Twitch.
Yeah, the
Twitch asked what kind of sauce.
And what sauce do you eat it with?
I thought he was talking to his familiar.
Oh my God. But no, it would be soaked in some
kind of sweet sauce, like a chocolate or a
like crickets.
Yeah.
But so it's a texture because at least in a giant spider, maybe it's different. But if we're talking about just spider, you're dealing with something that has a bit of an exoskeleton, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be crunchy.
Yep.
Yeah. They tend to fry them.
Yeah, it's going to be. Yeah, I imagine it'd be fried.
Yeah, they fry them.
Yeah, it's a crispy, crunchy.
Yeah, there's I love that. That's good. There's 3 actually different meats in the spider.
Interesting.
Which there's
Wait, seriously?
3 entirely different flavors.
Okay.
Okay, the Black Mamba gets one of them right. The legs are like chicken or cod, and
stringy
they do
muscle,
often,
maybe. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Tendons.
Just like a white.
Yep. Okay. I get it.
The head is described as a delicate, sweet white meat that sometimes has bits of the spider's head fur in it, and you can actually get a spider hairball while you're eating it.
Oh.
I love your face right now. Okay, on.
No.
My favorite piece, because this completely grosses me out, the abdomen is filled with a thick brown paste that is a mixture of organs, excrement, and egg sacs, sometimes fertilized.
Oh, that's straight up crab.
Yeah.
Like you rip it open and it's like, hey, if you like
right.
it, it's well, I forget what they call it, but like if you don't like it,
butter.
it's guts.
The butter.
Yeah.
And depending on which part of Cambodia you eat these, because that's the place that most serves these fried tarantulas generally. Depending on which part you're in, it's either considered a delicacy to eat the brown paste or extremely rude. just gross.
Awesome.
Don't do that.
See, I'm a little frustrated by your question, John, because I spent the entirety between unicorns and displacer beasts pondering what a displacer beast would taste like. No one asked it, so I was like,
Nobody
okay,
asked
I'm
it.
not going to worry about it
sorry.
with giant spiders.
Oh,
And then you throw the giant.
Well, that's Morganite's fault.
I was not curious about eating a thing. Sorry.
You got to be more curious about
You
eating
know what?
things.
You know, it's
Morgan.
not-
It's hard times in D&D. You know, I mean, you never know. You're out there adventuring. You might get hungry. You might be running low on supplies.
It's not made of sugar, so I don't care. There, sorry.
So I want to ask you guys a couple questions. We talked earlier about, part of the point of this was for me to kind of get a little bit into the fear of the spider. Like what makes a spider scary? So my first question is, and this is to all of you, you can answer separately, or you can just scream it all at once. But what is the biggest, meanest, fantasy spider, like dungeon and dragon spider that you could find if you researched this, or, that you can think of? Like, what would make that?
Are you trying to ask us to create a spider that would terrify us?
I'm asking partially yes, and then I'll use it against you. I'm partially
that's my
asking
fear.
if you found one. Like Tyler, you did a lot of research on the different types of spiders in Dungeons and Dragons. Did you find one that was just the meanest, nastiest one?
The one that I found to be most unpleasant was the crystal spider, which lives in deserts. It may not be a true spider. It's essentially this 8-legged soft thing that produces crystal to cover its body. Has psionic abilities. Its webs are essentially glass.
That's exciting.
It's more intelligent than your average spider. It drinks blood.
Wait, what?
Yeah, it's a.
Well, wait, that's not that abnormal, right? I mean, spiders, don't they normally drink blood, or
No.
is
Well,
that?
they melt you and drink the
Body slurry.
They liquefy your whole body. They're not vampires.
Body
That
slurpee,
is
I like
different.
But the crystal spider, specifically blood, it uses acid venom to get to the blood and creates elaborate traps with its nearly invisible webs. It can create heat rays.
What?
Yeah. No, it's this.
I can see why they got rid of this spider. It seems a little OP. This is.
This is a
little
boss
crazy.
monster fight where you walk it. You're walking through this open deserty ruin, and then all of a sudden someone fails their perception check and they're bleeding, and heat rays are blasting out of nowhere. This giant, silent, shiny spider comes down and just starts drinking people's blood. It's awesome.
Does anyone have one to match that?
No.
The only thing I can think of, Tyler, that comes close to that is the asteroid spider. Have you guys heard of the asteroid spider?
No.
This is from Spelljammer. This is the D&D. When they get on spaceships and they have intergalactic goblin warfare. It is a spider, a 10-legged spider, which I don't know if that means it's a spider anymore, but it's a 10-legged spider-like creature the size of like small asteroids that actually makes their web between asteroids, and they catch ships and then rip open the ships and devour the sweetmeats inside. The thing that's probably most terrifying about them is they lay thousands of eggs in the webs, and when the eggs hatch, all the adult spiders turn and try to go on a mad race to eat the babies. And the babies that are able to escape and rocket off into space are the ones that survive and build new colonies. That just terrified. The thought of all those like...
That's gnarly.
Yeah, you're just flying along and then you just see these scattering of giant space spiders.
They also have to be able to like go a really long time between meals. If they're if they're just chilling in space, hoping a spaceship happens to like fly into their webbing.
Well, I imagine they have all sorts of crazy stuff. I mean, they chill in space.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why they eat the babies.
Yeah,
they're really hungry.
They're really hungry, yeah.
That's like, I'm just trying to logic my way into like what kind of a
no logic necessary
structure you'd need to be able to survive in space as a giant organism spider with no air. Like what?
Yeah, or just how to be a giant insect, period. Like there's a lot of logic we're jumping over with these giant.
Oh, yeah,
let's talk about that for a minute. Because I'm getting a little freaked out. I'm getting a little scared.
Oh, do you want to hear? Do you want to hear some stories of eyewitness accounts of giant spiders in the wild?
Yes, please.
Before we completely disprove them.
What do you got?
So, in World War II in Papua New Guinea, on the Kokoda track, an American GI, one day he had to take himself off into the scrub to answer the call of nature. While thus engaged, he noticed he was crouched down next to a very large cobweb. Not the classic fishing net sort, but the fine, snow-white, cottony stuff that spread all over the ground and tree trunk, etc. His eye followed it one way and then the other. Seems it was very extensive, like 10 to 15 feet, either way. Then he noticed the spider itself, only a foot or so away from his face. It was a real horror. The body he described as the size of a small dog or puppy. It was colored jet black. The legs were thick and hairy, but not as long as the classic dinner plate tarantula type.
So but we know that this can't actually happen, right? There's like
that's what I love. I
mean, reassure me here.
No. This was real. This happened. This happened to a guy.
This happened to a guy. While he was taking a whiz.
Yeah. Well, he barely got away with his life.
He barely got away.
Yeah. These things aren't around anymore, maybe because they eradicated them. Perhaps the locals were like, "Nah, we're not going to keep this up." But
right, we got rid of the drow.
Yeah, that seems viable.
Well, now wait a minute. From what I've heard, these things can only reach like the largest spider ever recorded, and they found a perfectly intact fossil of the whole thing to the point where they could actually identify it as a female. Had a leg span of 6 inches, which grants you that is huge.
Wait, you're saying from one to the other?
Leg?
Yeah,
one single leg was 6
was
inches?
6 inches long.
Okay.
So that's pretty dog-sized.
Yeah, you got to figure probably a 15-inch
kitten size.
You got to figure probably
Chihuahua.
a 15-inch diameter as opposed to the largest, which only get to about 11.9 inches, I think is the record.
And I've read this has something to do with oxygen.
Yeah, that's how we had giant sloths and things like that.
Yeah, so...
Tell me about it.
There was higher oxygen content in the world.
But what does that mean? Like, why does that matter?
I don't know. Why does that matter,
So
Tyler?
the way that this is actually disproves all giant insects, unfortunately. We can't have any giant ants or giant spiders because the way in which insects breathe in their oxygen, it requires a lot of oxygen in the environment for them to get it through their tracheal respiratory system, which consists of a network of minute tubes carrying oxygen to every cell in the body. There's just a breakdown. There's not enough oxygen in the atmosphere to let them get big enough to be giant. If a giant spider existed, it would suffocate because it couldn't get enough air.
So basically, they can't push the oxygen through their.
No, it's just like an absorption.
Well, see that makes me feel better. It makes me feel science slowly explained will calm any nerves.
I mean, relatively speaking.
Well, I think I have my last question for you guys, and that is, we've come to it. We've talked a lot about spiders. We've talked about their, some of the goddess of spiders, the different spiders types, and all this. What would make a spider encounter scary for you? Is it size? Is it because these creatures? I mean, I think part of the fear is the visual aspect. So how do you, in a game, without using miniatures that are freaky? I mean, come on, that's the easy answer. Use a really creepy miniature. But without doing what would you describe that would make it scary?
I feel like you set the tone. You have people walking into, because especially if we're doing 5th edition, and 5th edition describes effectively all the spiders are web spiders. So we're not talking about like, these being hunted in the wilderness and having no clue, but like it effectively is laying in wait. You're on a mission to explore a cave or to go somewhere underground that's like a dark and spooky place. You have limited vision unless you're a particular race in the game. And there's, all of a sudden you start seeing webbing. Maybe you come across a wrapped up, cocooned body of like a previous explorer that didn't quite make it. And you know there's something there. You can't hear it because their stealth is like +7+, super dexterous creatures. You're constantly tripping over webbing. You're being slowed down over time trying to get through the webbing. And then you hear a little skittering. And maybe the guy who is the person who's furthest along in your party, an NPC that you guys aren't paying attention to, all of a sudden just, you hear a shrill and no longer see him. And I feel like you just set it up as like, there's this creature out here now hunting us and we're in its home. I feel like you set the tone.
I like that you're not paying attention to the NPC. I like this poor sad NPC.
No, he's just carrying my bags. he's just carrying.
You've got to build that tension when you're in a monster's lair and the combat is going to happen, but it keeps not happening. And you're just ratcheting up like, okay, there's webs everywhere. Okay, it's getting harder to walk. Okay, there's a writhing cocoon over there. Let's open it up. Oh, we can't save this guy because he's all melted. And, oh, look, spiderlings are starting to burst out of his chest.
So for you, it might not actually be even having a combat with them. It might be that you go through that whole section, you have no combat, and then your skin starts to itch, and you notice little hives building up on your skin.
It's the parasite aspect. Yeah.
Yeah. For you, Morganite, what would you add to that?
Personally, I'm not sure. I think I've been seriously desensitized to spiders in real life because I have them in my house all the time.
I'm never coming over again.
Yeah, spiders get less scary when there's a black widow hanging out like right by your TV.
Oh yeah. You're just like, whatever, there it is. But just don't go there. And part of it is the sheer number of video games and film adaptations I've seen that have giant spiders or have hordes of spiders. Like for an example, in video games, it's just like what Kayvon was describing. You see a dime a dozen in Skyrim. You walk through the tunnel, all the bodies on the walls. That's Skyrim.
Aren't the Skyrim spiders supposed to be pretty scary? Like you see it.
They are not. They are. I mean, maybe I'm overpowered at this point, but I mean, they're just. They're your size.
Aren't they supposed to? They look creepy.
No, I think no. It's just you. It's numbers. More than anything, I think would be the closest. It still would be just annoyance on my end rather than like genuine disturbance or fear.
Okay, so for you, it's either they're actually a threat.
If you're one-on-one, if you're like a solo adventure and you go and do a thing and you're fighting a giant spider that is like twice your size, I can see that being like, shit. If you are in a party, you're going to need the swarm. Otherwise, it's like, yeah, whatever, we can tank this. And, we made the bad mistake of not healing and then running into combat and then running into a whole bunch of spiders and thinking we could take them. And that was dumb. So, it's strategy really. And then
okay, so for you, I have to say it has 320 hit points, and it's coming at you.
And you're alone. Yeah.
Like part of what made the crystal spider so freaky to me when I was reading about it is it's a spider that like thrives on sunlight and like lives in this dry open place. Like it's the opposite of what you expect.
Yeah.
Like you're not expecting. So like ice spiders would be creepy too because it's just like, okay, we're in an Arctic. Yeah.
I agree. I think that would be a really cool swap up if we were to, or an adventurer was to bump it. Because you go into a cave, you go into a lonely mansion, you go into a crypt, you expect spiders. You'd be almost disappointed if it was like spiderless, you know? So I think it would be interesting to go to like, oh, here we're in an oasis with like hot springs and stuff. And oh my God, why is there a giant spider? Like that might throw you off guard because it would be so unexpected. The problem, of course, is finding reason for it to be there. And then you need a good story hook for that. But
so basically any toilet encounter with
that would be disturbing. Yeah, no, I agree.
All right, we'll get ready for that for our next role-playing session.
Beware of
the only time you've ever had to use the bathroom in Faerun and it doesn't go well. Oh. Well, that brings me to the end of my questions. I'm a little disappointed. I was told that if I came here and talked about spiders with you guys for an hour, I would get over my fears. I'm no less terrified of that thing that's up on the
John,
screen.
you came here with false expectations.
Yeah.
I promised to discuss them.
I wasn't hoping to allay your fears. I was hoping to make you not sleep tonight.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
Mama just gave you an idea to terrify you. He says, I think there are also trap spiders which dig underground and use the floor as a trap.
I read that. I read that around the time Tyler was talking about sleep, and all I could picture was them digging under the bed covers.
I feel like
there you go.
I feel like using like real world spiders rather than just like the generic fantasy. It's a cave covered in webbing. Like use some of the different
like a big wolf spider runs by with all its babies on its back.
Or like the social spiders that like take over entire thickets.
Oh yeah, those are terrifying in the sense of just sheer numbers. And I mean, like what Kayvon and I were talking about earlier about us walking through spider webs we don't even see. I think that would actually throw you off your game if it's like an invisible spider web and you can feel it but you can't see where it is or what made it. That would make it a little more disturbing. Even if it was just like a ton of little tiny ones that just swarmed you, like because that's just like, oh God, like get them out of my armor. But,
super gross.
The sensation of hit face first into a spider web, man.
Well, thanks, Tyler and Mamba. You guys have both proven that spiders are plenty terrifying in real life. That's your inspiration right there. Just look wiki on spiders and you've done it. Have we picked out our thing for next time?
Well, no, he hasn't. Kayvon, your turn.
I'll have to get back to you guys.
Kayvon, do you want to do a random flip? Should we do it live?
Random flip.
Random flip.
Right,
random flip.
We are doing the. Oh no, that's not a good.
Oh come on! Both of those are awesome.
You think those are
both of those?
Okay. It's gonna be between the. We can't do drow.
We can't do drow.
It's gonna be a hellhound. We did cats. Now we're doing dogs. Hellhound. No, I reserve the right to switch that one out in the next little bit.
Myconoids are cool.
Mimics are cool.
Do you want to mimic?
Yeah, let's do mimics.
Okay, we're gonna do mimic.
I like mimics a lot more.
Mimic it is. Mimics are cool creatures.
Mimics are cool. Mimics are sick.
Yeah, that's a great choice. All right, we're gonna do mimics.
So tentatively on the 23rd of July, we will be discussing live mimics. Awesome. So yeah, thanks again for hanging out, everybody. It's always a joy to get your questions. We love having the live sessions because it just adds a little bit of awesome to our day.
There's some nice unpredictability to it.
Right. So yeah, Kayvon, Tyler, Jonathan, thank you so much for joining. My name is Morgan, and we are part of Alignment May Vary. If you enjoy what you heard here, this podcast will be going up on our podcast. The audio for the
with that removed.
With that removed. This session will go up on our podcast on the various places you can download that, Spotify, iTunes, and pretty much anywhere you can get our stuff from. Check us out on alignmentmayvary.com for all of our social media links, including Facebook, Twitter, our Patreon page as well. We'd love to have you drop by. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to send them. We have an email address for you guys to reach out to. So,
and you can always send questions ahead of time if you want us to answer them in the show. I mean, you don't. We love having the live questions, but if you're not going to be able to make it, go ahead and shoot us a question at alignmentmayvary@gmail.com. And you can also shoot us questions on anything D&D related. We do another podcast where we answer those questions.
All right, awesome. So I think we're done now. So wonderful podcast. Good to see you all, and we will catch you next time. Bye.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Later.